Above Kunwu mountain, fate itself seemed to hold its breath. For 10,000 years, chains forged from the spirit realm had bound a being that once commanded armies capable of drowning worlds in blood. The ancient cultivators believed time would grind her will into dust. They were wrong. Deep within the devil, suppressing pagoda beneath layers of heavenly restrictions and divine treasures, something stirred, a fragment of a soul that should never have remained in the mortal realm. A wolf with two heads, two souls, and only one would survive. Tonight seals would tremble, treachery would bloom, and the boundary between righteous and devil would blur beyond recognition. For when an ancient devil awakens the heavens, do not ask whether the world is ready. They simply watch it burn. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. It would be ideal if everything could proceed so smoothly. However, we can only advance one step at a time, Han Li replied, his tone as calm and detached as drifting mist. At that very moment, a thunderous explosion erupted from behind him, the sound reverberating through the air like the roar of a collapsing mountain. Han Li instantly recognized it as the fall of a gold-weight spirit tree. Yet not a flicker of anxiety crossed his face. He was already less than 100 meters from Kunwu Hall. High above the towering gates, he could make out a peculiar plaque, neither metal nor wood, its substance ancient and inscrutable. Upon it, in bold strokes of archaic golden script, the words Kunwu Hall blazed proudly, as though untouched by the erosion of countless years. Han Li exhaled softly. A trace of hesitation surfaced in his eyes before he slipped a jade bottle from within his sleeve. Tilting it slightly, he allowed a single drop of myriad-year spirit milk to fall into his mouth. Resisting the oppressive gold-weight gravity had drained him to the brink. But as the spirit milk dissolved within him, a warm torrent of power surged through his meridians. In an instant, his depleted strength was restored. Azure radiance blossomed around him, golden lightning crackled and coiled, and violet flames flared brilliantly once more, as if rejoicing in their rebirth. Without further delay, Han Li quickened his pace and strode toward the palace gates. On the 7th floor of the devil-suppressing pagoda, a crisp detonation echoed through the chamber. The crystalline wall that had obstructed the large-headed eccentric and his companions finally shattered under their relentless assault. Shards burst outward like splintered ice before gradually dissolving into motes of fading light. The wall truly lives up to its reputation as the Buddhist sanctuary sect's signature treasure. It has delayed us for quite some time. Let us proceed, the eccentric remarked, with a casual wave of his hand. The sparkling silver sword hovering before him shrank to the size of a needle and vanished back into his robes. The old Ye clan elder withdrew, his white jade ruler, anxiety etched across his face. After such a delay, could the sacred poison sect have already obtained the treasure? Do not fret, the elder devil replied serenely. Even if they have, they will not be able to wield it immediately. We can simply seize it from them. Exactly. That is precisely my intention. The large-headed eccentric let out a hearty laugh and strode forward, taking the lead across the 7th floor. The old Ye clan elder nodded, forcing a dry smile as he hurried after them. In the blink of an eye, the trio descended the stone staircase and entered a chamber housing 2 spell formations. Before them lay 2 short-range teleportation arrays, one black, one white. Their expressions mirrored the earlier astonishment of the sacred poison sect elders. Yet when the elder devil's gaze settled upon the black formation, a faint glimmer of delight flickered across his face. How can there be 2 teleportation arrays? Which one leads to the 8th floor? The old man muttered. Residual spiritual chi fluctuations lingered around the white formation, evidence of recent use, and his eyes naturally gravitated toward it. There is no need to choose, the elder devil said in a peculiar tone, his eyes fixed upon the black array. We will use this one, that one. But the sacred poison sect elders. Before he could finish, the elder devil's sleeve flicked without warning. A jet-black devilish arm shot forth like a viper, seizing the old man's head before he even realized what was happening. Ah! A terrified scream tore from his throat, then his head exploded in a gruesome burst, blood and fragments scattering like a smashed watermelon. Yet the assault did not end there. The elder devil spat forth a stream of pitch-black devil flames that engulfed the headless corpse before it could even collapse. Amid faint crackling sounds, the body was reduced to curling threads of smoke, vanishing into ash. From within the churning black flames, a white nascent soul shot forth, clutching a miniature white jade ruler. Terror distorted its tiny features. "Seventh uncle, save me," it shrieked, pouring every shred of spiritual power into the ruler. But the surrounding devil fire bound it in place, denying any hope of instant escape. A strange scene unfolded. The large-headed eccentric merely watched his face devoid of expression, as the nascent soul struggled desperately against the consuming flames. Moments later, fractures began to spider across the tiny spiritual body. Piercing screams rang out as the nascent soul was devoured by devil fire, until the very last instant disbelief lingered within it. And thus it perished, consumed by resentment. Only then did the eccentric speak, a trace of annoyance threading his voice. "Why now? Did you not say you would act at the final level?" The elder devil cast him a sidelong glance. "I had believed she would be on the final floor, but I have already sensed her aura. The old man's presence would have been an insult. Or, do you regret his death?" A complex expression flickered across the eccentric's face before fading. "What is there to regret over a mere junior? Indeed, fellow Taoists' resolve is admirable. Once we rescue the incarnation of the sacred ancestor, she will employ a secret technique to infuse devilish qi into your body. With your aptitude, the chances of advancing to the deity transformation stage will be exceedingly high." The eccentric snorted, though his gaze wavered faintly. "If my lifespan were not nearing its end, I would never betray my clan for a devil like you." "Devil." The elder devil's lips curled in faint disdain. "Should the infusion succeed, you will become one of our holy race. In our realm, countless humans have turned. There is no cause for hesitation. Enough. Let us proceed. We must not leave room for mishap." The eccentric stepped into the teleportation formation without further words. The elder devil scoffed softly and followed. In a flash of light, both vanished without a trace. Moments later, they reappeared within an identical formation. But this chamber was shrouded in dimness, streaked with flickering black light. "This is—" The eccentric steadied himself from the dizziness and surveyed his surroundings in confusion. "You should look to the sky," the elder devil said, his voice trembling with restrained excitement. The eccentric lifted his gaze and sharply inhaled. 300 meters above them, layers upon layers of restrictions shimmered with dense spiritual light. At their center floated what appeared to be a small mountain, suspended in mid-air. Thick black chains coiled around it, and countless restraints layered upon its surface. Nearby, yellow mirrors gleamed, weaving together into an immense net that encased the black mass. Then the eccentric's eyes fell upon the figure within, and his breath caught. A colossal two-headed wolf, over 300 meters in length, lay bound within the restraints. Though shackled, its silver fur shimmered with cold brilliance, radiating a divine majesty that would cause mortals to mistake it for a god. Yet the two heads were strikingly different. One was silver-white, pristine and radiant. The other was glossy black, shrouded in faint inky qi, with a proud purple horn rising from its brow. Both heads lay motionless, as if sunk in eternal slumber. "This is the sacred ancestor incarnation you spoke of." "Yes, this is the incarnation of sacred ancestor Yuan, ranked among the top 5 in strength within the Holy Realm. Of course, this is not her true body, but merely a fragment of her soul possessing a demon wolf from the spirit realm. Even so, she far surpasses ordinary deity transformation cultivators. So long as the spirit realm does not intervene, she would stand unrivaled within the mortal realm." It should also be mentioned, sacred ancestor Yuan was one of the 3 commanders who led our invasion of this world. Sacred ancestor Yuan, the eccentric murmured the name heavy upon his tongue. The elder devil turned toward him. "Protect me for a moment, brother Ye." I will employ a secret art to commune with the ancestor's soul. Very well, the eccentric replied, casting aside his lingering doubts. Assured, the elder devil formed an incantation gesture. Wisps of black chi seeped from his body, swiftly engulfing him. A low roar reverberated through the chamber. From within the surging darkness emerged a towering two-headed, four-armed figure, 10 meters tall, exuding a suffocating tide of baleful chi that forced the eccentric to retreat several steps involuntarily. The elder devil chanted in a low, ominous tone. His four scaled arms formed intricate seals as black chi writhed around him like a living shroud, lending him the aura of a descending devil god. The eccentric vigilantly scanned their surroundings before fixing his gaze upon the colossal wolf. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the elder devil abruptly ceased his chant. He spat out a sphere of black-red blood essence. Simultaneously, his four arms unleashed four spell seals into it. The blood essence twisted and transformed into a bizarre sigil before vanishing from sight. An instant later, the sigil reappeared before the black wolf's head. The purple horn shimmered faintly. Then the wolf's black eyes stirred. Slowly, inexorably, they opened. Dazzling violet light blazed forth as if twin stars had ignited in the darkness. Unbeknownst to either of them, within a sealed chamber of the nearby palace, a silver box suddenly began to shine as though awakened from deep slumber. Above it hovered a half-foot emerald-green ruler, rotating gently in mid-air, releasing a soft spiritual radiance that enveloped the box below. The wooden ruler hovering above the silver box shimmered faintly, its surface veined with ancient patterns. A barrier of soft green light cascaded downward from it, enveloping the box in a translucent cocoon. Then, in a sudden flicker, the radiance receded entirely as though swallowed by the void. Strangely, more than 30 meters away stood a lone figure motionless as a corpse. He was clad in azure robes, a crimson headscarf bound tightly around his brow. Thin green lines glowed faintly across his face, like venomous sigils etched into flesh. It was none other than Hua Tianqi, the illustrious Grand Elder of the sacred poison sect. Yet his eyes were shut, his expression rigid and lifeless. Blood seeped slowly from every orifice, ears, nose, mouth, tracing dark paths down his cheeks. Were it not for the faint rise and fall of his chest, he would have appeared no different from the dead. As for the other members of his sect, not a single one could be seen. Only distant muffled explosions echoed faintly through the sealed space, as though someone were desperately struggling against an unseen restriction. Within the other realm, the violet brilliance that had flared from the black wolf-head's eyes gradually dimmed and vanished. In its place came a woman's voice, clear and mellifluous, the very same voice that had once resounded on the day xianxia was ensnared. Yet this time, beneath its sweetness, lay a blade of frost, and its tone was far less restrained. Bloodflame, so it was you. I had assumed you had already returned. I did not expect you to linger still in this world. The elder devil immediately bowed with utmost respect. This junior pays his respects to sacred ancestor. In the past I acted too late, and nearly suffered complete annihilation. Were it not for my knowledge of the passage between the holy realm and the mortal realm, and for their desire to extract my soul for interrogation, I would not have survived to this day. The black wolf head listened impassively before giving a slight nod. Then your fortune is indeed considerable. The spatial tear within the spirit ether garden that we once used had already collapsed by the time we sought to return. Our path home was severed. Standing quietly to the side, the large-headed eccentric listened with mounting astonishment. The feminine voice bore none of the savage malice he had imagined. Could this truly be the elder devil who had nearly eradicated the ancient cultivators? The wolf's gaze lowered toward the thick black chains that bound her colossal form. Since you have come, you must possess some plan. However, I will first warn you, rescuing me will not be so simple. Your current cultivation is insufficient to shatter even a single heavenly star chain. These are treasures passed down from the spirit realm, forged precisely to restrain beings of our kind. Sacred ancestor, rest assured, the elder devil replied swiftly. I have prepared thoroughly. Fellow Taoist Ye will assist us, and I have gathered numerous devilish artifacts to aid in breaking the seal. The Black Wolf shook her head slowly. Even if you succeed in breaking the chains, I cannot allow you to act immediately. Why? Shock flickered across the Elder Devil's 4 eyes, suffused with purple-red light. The eccentric, too, stiffened in surprise. It is simple, the wolf replied with a faint sigh. The heavenly star chains are not the most formidable restraint here. Look beneath your feet. Beneath our feet. Bewildered, both men lowered their gazes. All they saw was the black teleportation formation upon which they stood, nothing more. The Black Wolf head turned to glance at her still slumbering silver counterpart, her expression grave. Do you truly believe I may leave this place at will? The divine spirit treasure on the 8th floor will activate the instant I attempt escape. Should you perform any excessive action, that treasure will immediately teleport you away, preventing your return. And the primary reason I was sealed here in the first place lies within this troublesome silver moon wolf body. Both men stared at the dormant silver wolf head, dawning comprehension creeping into their eyes. The Elder Devil hesitated before asking, in the past, was not the wolf's primal soul devoured by sacred ancestor? Has something changed? The Black Wolf snorted, irritation lacing her voice. When I first possessed this body, there were 2 primal souls. I grievously injured one and it fled. Believing it no longer a threat, I turned my attention elsewhere. As for the other, it concealed itself within the body through some secret technique. At the crucial moment of my battle against the 3 masters of Kunwu, it struck from within. I was defeated, and thus sealed. 2 primal souls, one body harboring 2 souls. The eccentric could not suppress his cry of astonishment. You humans are unexpectedly knowledgeable, she said coolly. This body originally possessed but 1 soul. The second appeared later. When it manifested, the first soul resisted me fiercely for control. The wolf's cultivation method was exceedingly peculiar. Even after possessing this body for years, I sensed nothing amiss. Does the second wolf soul still exist? The Elder Devil pressed. Of course. When the humans captured me, I discovered this silver moon wolf was the concubine of the divine wolf Celestial Koi, one of the demon monarchs of the spirit realm. She was among the rare few demons who descended in their true bodies. I seized control only because she was severely weakened by her descent into the mortal realm. Had she been at her peak, a mere soul fragment, such as I would never have succeeded. The existence of her dual souls caught me entirely off guard. Her tone darkened. By then I had already corrupted most of the body. The humans could not expel me, yet dared not destroy the body either. Thus they sealed me within the devil-suppressing pagoda. The Elder Devil managed to retain his composure, though his expression had stiffened. The eccentric, however, stood utterly dumbfounded. So the second wolf soul still remains within that body. The Elder Devil asked, forcing a bitter smile as he stared at the silver wolf head. A soft, almost teasing chuckle escaped the Black Wolf. It is not here at present, but shortly she will return. You were fortunate that I was in control when you awakened me. Sacred ancestor. What do you mean? A tremor crept into the Elder Devil's voice. It is quite straightforward. The ancient cultivators used the Blackwind flag to seal me in this spirit-devoid land and deliberately extracted the second wolf's soul. They spared no effort in constructing a palace brimming with spiritual chi for her. Periodically, she returns to contest control of this body. Once exhausted, she withdraws to replenish herself. Her violet eyes glimmered coldly. Because I am confined here and can rely only upon the devilish chi within me to resist her. I have long been at a disadvantage. To maintain control, I had no choice but to employ the greater spirit fuse arts. What? The spirit fuse arts? You have already? The Elder Devil's respectful tone faltered as shock overtook him. That is correct, she replied evenly. I fused my soul with hers, forming an entirely new one. Her soul served as the foundation, I the secondary. At first, the fusion was unstable. When the cultivators perceived the new soul, they could not discern its true nature. Unable to verify her identity, They dared not release the seal, nor did they dare destroy her due to her status. Thus they sealed the entire mountain. A faint smile curved her lips. Over 10,000 years, the fusion gradually stabilized. However, several days ago, the other half covertly drew a deity transformation cultivator into phantasmic air, weakening our merged soul and causing it to split once more. Yet I suspect this will be the final division. Once she replenishes herself within that palace of spiritual qi, our souls shall fuse completely and irrevocably. She spoke with calm composure as though recounting trivial history. The two men, however, were rendered speechless. After a long silence, the elder devil let out a hollow laugh. "Great sacred ancestor, are you now the soul of a demon? Or do you still belong to our holy race?" The wolf regarded him indifferently. "What distinction do you seek?" The elder devil could only bow his head and fall silent. After pondering for a moment, the eccentric spoke. "Since you have revealed so much, sacred ancestor must already have a means to suppress your counterpart. Please enlighten us." Purple light flickered within the wolf's eyes. "Before that, I must ask, why would a human such as you aid Bloodflame? I perceive that your lifespan is nearly exhausted. Death stands at your doorstep. Do you seek devilish qi to prolong your existence?" A sinister expression slowly spread across the eccentric's face. "Since you have seen through me, I will conceal nothing. I would rather walk the devil Dao for eternity than succumb to age and let 1,000 years of bitter cultivation and blood-soaked battles vanish into dust. Would you have me submit meekly to the cycle of life and death?" The black wolf head cast a sidelong glance at the eccentric, her violet pupils glinting faintly. "Your words are frank and bold. Since you have already steeled your resolve, then if you aid in my escape, I shall personally infuse devilish qi into your body. I will not conceal the unpleasant truth with your aptitude. Your chance of success is no more than 50%. However, even should you fail to break through, the infusion alone will vastly extend your lifespan. The longevity of our holy race far surpasses that of mere humans. You will gain another opportunity to ascend to the deity transformation stage." The large-headed eccentric threw his head back and burst into wild laughter, his voice echoing through the dark chamber like rolling thunder. "Only 50%. Even if it were but 1 in 10, I would still dare to wager. Speak what must be done to free you." "I shall not waste words," the black wolf replied, her tone cooling. "At my current stage of spirit fuse, once the other soul re-enters this body, I will be unable to resist our complete reintegration. The only way to prevent that outcome is to exterminate it." A faint, dangerous light flickered within her eyes. "It is presently confined within a grand execution formation personally established by the 3 masters of Kunwu 81. Devil executing sabers forming its core. Should devilish qi approach, the blades will instantly awaken, forming an annihilating array of terrifying might. Bloodflame cannot breach it. Your cultivation path is neither righteous nor Buddhist, but neither is it devilish. Thus, you alone may enter without triggering the formation's full force. The extermination of that wolf soul must fall to you." Her voice shifted subtly, no longer icy but low and almost coaxing, like silk concealing steel. "Complete this task, and your devilish infusion shall be assured." For a fleeting instant, the eccentric's expression wavered. Then, after a moment of grinding silence, he clenched his teeth, discarding any thought of bargaining. Where a trace of satisfaction flashed across the wolf's gaze. "Fellow Taoist, Ye is perceptive indeed. From where you arrived, there were 2 formations. The one you did not choose leads directly to the wolf soul." The eccentric nodded sharply. "The sacred poison sect elders should already be there. That complicates matters. But if I strike before they anticipate it, they will be easily dealt with." Without further hesitation, he formed an incantation gesture. Light flared beneath his feet, and in a flash his figure vanished from the formation. Only the elder devil Bloodflame remained. As soon as the eccentric disappeared, the wolf's eyes dimmed, and a chilling aura seeped from her colossal frame. The heavenly star chains binding her began to tremble faintly, resonating with a low metallic hum. Threads of black radiance seeped through the links like veins of ink, spreading through silver. In an indifferent tone, she spoke. "In the presence of that human, I found it inconvenient to inquire. How many of our race's artifacts have you recovered?" The elder devil immediately bowed deeply. "Sacred ancestor, I have retrieved 5 relics left behind in the mortal realm." A sinister curve touched the wolf's lips. "5 will suffice. Bring them forth at once. Though I command only half the magic power within this body, if I struggle with full force, I can break free from the Black Wind Flag's suppression. A divine spirit treasure, without a master to wield it, cannot restrain me indefinitely." Yes, without delay, the elder devil swept his arms outward. Black radiance coalesced in his hands as devilish artifacts manifested one by one, a pitch-black mirror, a blood-red authority token engraved with ancient glyphs, a jade lotus exuding faint malevolent chi, and a grey jade band etched with runic patterns. For the 5th, he opened his mouth wide and spat out a small black bottle that hovered before him. The 5 artifacts began to revolve ceaselessly around his head, spinning faster and faster until they became streaks of dark light. The elder devil let out a piercing whistle. Black brilliance erupted from his body like a rising tide. The 5 relics trembled violently before shooting upward into the air. Instantly, the surrounding restrictions sensed the disturbance. Brilliant spiritual light ignited across the chamber, layer upon layer, illuminating the darkness like a storm of stars descending into chaos. Meanwhile, Han Li stood before the towering gates of Kunwu Hall, his gaze fixed beyond them, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Great North Essence lights. Who would have imagined they would appear here? He murmured. Before him stretched a dense mass of winding silver threads, twisting and interweaving like living filaments of moonlight. They were unmistakably the same phenomenon he had encountered in Devilfall Valley. Yet here they were not anchored to boulders or cliffs. Instead, they emanated from the massive pillars of the hall itself, forming a shimmering barrier that concealed the interior from sight. Suddenly, wild, unrestrained laughter rang out from behind him. "Brother Han, will you take the initiative to plunge into the Great North Essence light? Or shall we escort you in with our weapons?" Old Devil Qian's voice howled with malicious amusement. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he turned. Behind him, only a dozen gold-weight spirit trees remained standing along the path to the gate. Old Devil Qian and the others had nearly caught up. As they frantically hacked down the last of the spirit trees with their treasures, their gazes remained fixed on Han Li, each wearing a different expression. The demons had known of the Great North Essence lights from the outset. The others, upon recognizing the phenomenon from afar, had immediately realized its peril. The atmosphere was complex, half dread, half grim delight. On one hand, Han Li could not advance. On the other, neither could they. Old Devil Qian's laughter rose and fell, erratically brimming with schadenfreude. The Great North Essence light was a dead end to any cultivator caught unprepared. No wonder he reveled in it. Han Li merely scoffed. Without another word, he turned back and slapped his storage pouch. A jet-black ring flew out, circling him once, before expanding to a diameter of 3 meters. Ancient talismanic characters crawled across its surface like living script. It was none other than one of the Heaven-Earth rings. Han Li pointed forward, sending the massive ring drifting ahead of him. At the same time, he formed a hand seal and struck the ring lightly. A dark barrier descended, enveloping him completely. The moment the barrier formed, Old Devil Qian's laughter died abruptly. Every face beyond the trees stiffened in disbelief. He has a way through the Great North Essence light. The thought struck them like lightning. Driven by panic, they redoubled their assault on the remaining gold-weight spirit trees. Then they watched. Han Li's figure blurred and he shot forward. The dense lattice of silver light twisted and writhed around him like serpents disturbed from slumber. Yet wherever the black barrier passed, the Great North Essence lights parted and slid aside, unable to penetrate it. The onlookers exchanged glances of dismay. Faster, We cannot let him seize the treasure. The silver-winged night fiend shouted, his face twisted in alarm. Ge Tianhao's complexion turned ashen. Even if we hasten, what difference does it make? The light bars our way. Old Devil Qian sneered. Great North Essence lights will not stop me. The 5 Xingque devils converged in a flash, merging into a towering white silhouette. Without hesitation, it leapt forward, disregarding the remaining spirit trees entirely. Grand Elder Yu, Ge Tianhao and the others gasped. The instant the white figure entered the range of the gold-weight spirit trees, a terrifying pressure descended from above, crushing downward like the weight of heaven itself. The silhouette faltered mid-stride. Arch, Ahach, a thunderous roar exploded from within it. The white radiance shattered. Collapsing inward then, from its core burst a crimson duplicate that shot forward in a streak of blood-red light. It traveled over 30 meters before landing heavily upon the ground. The crimson figure trembled slightly before straightening and continuing toward the hall at an unhurried pace, as though nothing had occurred. The spectacle left the others stunned. The silver-winged night fiend immediately transmitted his voice to the horned woman. Now that we have reached this point, it is time for fellow Taoist Guy to display her abilities. We must act at once. Those medallions cannot fall into their hands. The horned woman nodded silently. White light erupted from her body as she leapt into the air. Black and white radiance alternated across her form, and in a flash, she transformed into a massive tortoise over 10 meters tall. Without pause, she charged forward. The lion hawk and the silver-winged night fiend immediately descended upon her shell, riding atop it as she entered the range of the gold-weight spirit trees. The moment they crossed the boundary, crushing force pressed down upon them. The two atop her shell were instantly suppressed, their bodies locked in place, unable to move even a finger. Yet the tortoise itself continued to glow brilliantly. She crawled forward steadily, seemingly unaffected by the oppressive gravity. At that moment, the remaining gold-weight spirit trees began to shimmer strangely. Golden talismanic characters peeled away from their trunks, rising into the air before descending swiftly into the bodies of the three. The lion hawk and the night fiend attempted to resist, unleashing blinding protective light, but the golden characters slipped into their flesh without obstruction. It had little visible effect on the tortoise. But for the other two, despair clouded their expressions as though an invisible restriction had shackled their souls. Fortunately, the remaining distance was short. After a brief but suffocating struggle, the tortoise finally exited the tree's domain. The oppressive force lifted instantly. The two demons atop her shell drew in long, ragged breaths as clarity returned to their minds. For a fleeting moment, relief washed over them like cool rain after a storm.